highest point in the continental United States. And the lowest point is a place called Badwater Basin. It's negative 282 feet below sea level. And it used to finish literally at the top of Mount Whitney, which is the highest mountain in the continental United States, which is, I believe, 14,000. We'll call it 500-ish.
And at the time when it did that, how many miles was the race?
146.
Yeah, 146. They since stopped it at the Whitney portal due to permitting and trails. So the official race stops at 135 miles. It's still on Mount Whitney, but it's at about 8,900 feet.
So from negative 280 whatever to almost 9,000 feet. First of all, that's a lot of climbing, obviously, just to make the elevation. But also, 9,000 feet, that's enough to affect breathing, right? I mean, I think that essentially anything over 7,500 feet or so is definitely going to affect your breathing. What is that a factor? I mean, is it enough of a factor considering, you know, the other major factors, which we'll talk about in a second? Is the elevation itself a factor in the race?
Well, you actually climb 20,000 feet because you go over a mountain in Death Valley and a second one leaving Death Valley. So during the course of the race, you climb over a little over 20,000 and descend about 6,000.
It seems like
Will
a lot of
can answer
wasted
this.
climbing, huh?
Yeah, Will can answer this a little bit better, but when I was out there to crew, the elevation didn't affect my breathing much. I don't know if it's because we come from such humidity and the air there just isn't as thick and as heavy. But there wasn't really any point where I felt like the elevation was a problem. But you're only at 9,000 feet for essentially a mile.
Right.
In the final climb.
And it's the last 13 miles are literally straight uphill. So the level of exertion isn't as high at that point in the race. So it's not like you're going anaerobic. Why
do you say? Oh, because you're not really running at that point, is what you're saying.
Well, we don't say that out loud, but yeah.
Oh, see, that's what happens when you have somebody like me doing an interview about Badwater. What else are we not allowed to say out loud?
No, I'm joking. No, essentially, it's a slugfest going up that last 13 miles. So yeah. Generally it takes people, I'll say 3 to 4 hours to go 13 miles. And these are all people that during any half marathon could run it in an hour and a half.
Yeah, the fastest runners, it takes 3 hours and 15 minutes to make that climb. It's a pretty significant. There's switchbacks at one point that have pretty decent elevation on them.
Would you say is it 5,000 feet climb?
Yeah.
The last 13 miles.
Wow, so 13 miles, 5,000 feet. We're talking about, you know, for the fastest people, a 3.5 hour half marathon.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah. And what would you say is a more typical time period for that last half marathon?
I would say average is 4 hours.
Yeah, the average is probably 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be happy if
I'd be very happy with 4.
I can do it in 4 hours.
Yeah, so we're talking
at that point in the race.
About 20-minute miles at that point or so, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've got some elevation. We've got some air quality or air oxygen level issues there, but not so much. What are the major factors at Badwater? What is it that makes it so challenging?
The heat.
Yeah, it's the heat, and managing the heat. So the race used to start in the heat of the day, in Badwater Basin, at between like 9 a.m. and noon, which made it very difficult because you were starting when it was 120 to 125 degrees. Now it starts between 8 and 11 at night, depending on what wave you're in. Some people say that's easier. However, you're starting at night, so a lot of people go out a lot faster than you would have traditionally in the race. You have to manage your exertion, you have to manage your hydration and your calories, because you only make it so many miles before the sun comes up in the morning. You're still in Death Valley. It's only about 3 to 5 degrees cooler at that portion of Death Valley when the sun comes up. So now you have a solid 10 hours of running under your belt, and you're going to deal with temperatures that are 115 to 125 degrees at the air level on the street. So if you haven't managed your resources...
But that's Fahrenheit. We're not talking Celsius here.
I don't even know how to do Celsius. But if
somehow I don't believe that. I bet you do.
But if you don't manage the first night well, you could be in for 30 hours of struggling to make it the last 100 miles.
Yeah. Because
you've already put yourself behind, and that's tough to catch up on in that kind of heat.
So what are we talking about as far as temperature-wise at the start? Are you guys starting? By the way, are you starting in the same wave?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does everybody start together? How does that work?
There's 3 waves, hour and a half apart. Basically because the park doesn't want 90 people turned loose at the exact same time with their cars, and there's a progression of expected finish times.
Okay.
So I won't say slower, but the people expected to take longer would start first, middle wave, and then the elite wave, which Mike's in, is the last wave. So
I don't know about the elite part, but okay.
Yeah, last wave. Yeah.
So
I'm in the middle wave, and Mike is in the last wave.
Okay, Mike, is that like a lot of pressure to be in that elite wave?
No, because it's a little intimidating. I mean, these are guys that when I first decided I wanted to run this race, I'm going to be running with them. Guys who've been doing this for 15 to 20 years or have done things that I could only dream about doing, but when it's all said and done, you have to run your own race, because if you don't manage the miles within your own capabilities, you're going to spend 2 days walking through Death Valley miserable.
Instead of a day and a half running through Death Valley miserable.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know if Mike agrees with this, but this year I expect, I don't know about a record time, but there'll be more fast finishers than there've ever been. There's the field is stacked this year with some fast people. So.
Sorry, I was just looking at our live feed and seeing who's in there. It's so far away, I can't read, and I have my glasses on. So thanks for joining us. I can see that there's some comments
Janet.
And stuff, but thank you. Thank you.
Janet's watching. That's one group of badass runners right there.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sure that you're mostly talking about me, so I appreciate that.
4.98 miles.
So I'm infamous for cutting my mileage by a tenth or 2/10 of a mile. So 4.98 would be a perfect run for me, whereas for most runners, I know that would drive them crazy.
I'm not like that. I round my miles up and my times down. So
there you go. You're perfectly willing to do a.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Great. So I'm not alone.
No.
All right. So we talked about some elevation factors. We talked about the heat. What about just the miles, just the number of miles? Is there any significance that it's 135 miles, or not that number is special, but does that amount of miles change things significantly from, let's say, a 100-miler?
I guess I'm going to say not necessarily, because although Addie's gone farther than probably all of us here, I think she's done 150 miles, but if you can manage the nutrition, it's about dealing with the pain. And so if you're dealing with it for 100 miles, essentially it doesn't get any worse. It just stays right there, and it's how long can you handle it.
You can tolerate it.
Yeah, and
sure.
So what's great about Badwater and what's horrible about it is you can see where you're going for like all day. You have to go there, and it doesn't necessarily get any closer, but you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. So I'm pretty out there. I was more landmark oriented than mileage more oriented, so that's how I dealt with it. Whereas like if you're doing a loop 100 miler, you're maybe counting the loops or the miles. So
there is an interesting phenomenon out there with things that are far in the distance looking much closer, right? I think it has something to do with the lack of humidity, but the visibility is so much better. You just know that when you like land in Las Vegas, you land and you get out of the plane, you look, and like the strip looks like it's literally in the airport, and it looks closer than it is. Is that true with the landmarks at Badwater?
I will say that when I paced out there, the sun going down was one of the greatest experiences, because you can see Mount Whitney for about 45 miles.
Yeah.
You come down the second mountain, which is Father Crowley, and as soon as you hit the peak, you can see the mountain, and you're at mile like 80. So the whole descent and the whole 50K in the Lone Pine, the mountain's right in front of you, and it doesn't get any closer for about 8 hours.
All day.
So when the sun finally goes down, the best part is, at that point, it's not even the relief from the heat, because once you leave Death Valley towards the end, it does get cooler. It's just the fact that you and the runner and the crew aren't looking at a landmark that is getting no closer. When the sun goes down, you can see the town lights, and those actually get closer.
Yeah.
So yeah, the visibility at night, you can see the Milky Way, you can see shooting stars, you can see planets. And it's gorgeous during the day through the first two ranges, the vistas that you see and the views. But once you come down that second mountain, and the finish line is looming ahead of you, and you know it's still 12 to 14 hours away, that's a tough one to swallow.
Yeah. It sounds like the whole thing might be a little tough to swallow.
Well, it's kind of unique, especially coming from Florida when I was there, because it's actually like 4 different races. Because you have a section that's 40 miles of rolling hills through Death Valley at night. Then you have a section of 2 mountain ranges in the heat, with a pretty difficult stretch in between. Then you have the third portion, which is the run to the base of the mountain, which is a flat 50K, which, if you still have legs at that point, is where the race is usually decided and how well you finish or how well you don't finish. And then obviously the final ascent up the mountain, which is a lot different than races around here, because even point-to-point races like the Keys are generally flat and hot for the duration. Or you have loops like Skydive, or one of the trail races like Ancient Oaks, which vary in terrain, but it's 3 to 10 miles of a repeat, so you do it once and you know what to expect. There, the heat goes up and down, the elevation goes up and down, and it's just extremely different sections of the race, so you can break them up, like Will said, to run 2 landmarks.
Yeah.
Which is good, but it also switches things up for your legs and just changes the race.
Exactly. 4 different races is a great way to look at it, because whatever the weather's like in that chunk is what you deal with, and it's like a lot of mountain races I've run. You don't think about the mileage you're going. The next aid station's 5 miles, so that's all you focus on, get to the next aid station, and then you just do it over and over again, managing your body the whole time. So.
The aid stations are similar to aid stations in any race? Is that what you mean?
No, there are no aid stations in Death Valley, but I'm saying in a typical point-to-point mountain race where you don't have a crew that can meet you, there would be a standing aid station. But in Badwater, it's your car, and your crew will be hopping with you.
So let's talk about crewing a little bit. Addie is here representing the crew set. What is it to crew at Badwater, and what does it mean? Like, is that something you have to train for? What does the crew do?
Everything. All the nasty jobs. I've crewed Mike a ton by myself with a team, so I'm very familiar on his behavior during races.
She's being very nice.
Yeah, I mean...
Your behavior.
Managing for them, really, because you can't really think when you just want to be able to run if you're the runner and not have to calculate, when's the last time I took something, when's the last time I peed, what did that look like? So all things like that. And when you're going over 100 miles, it's definitely important to have people there to take care of you, because you just can't.
You can, but like that that know you, or know racing, or both?
Well,
like, what's
I
more
mean,
important?
it depends on the runner. I think for Mike, he needs someone that knows him. But some runners don't care to have that relationship with someone. They just want someone that knows what they're doing, that has had experience either crewing or actually doing it themselves. So, I mean, it just depends on the runner.
What do you think, Will? Do you want somebody there that knows you? Would you like to have your wife crewing?
Yeah, she was going to. She has to stay behind this year. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm completely self-sufficient, because I'm not, but I'm able to kind of go solo for a while, but you need somebody at Badwater just due to the extreme conditions to kind of keep an eye.
Do you mean like just for safety, to keep an eye on you? Like,
yeah, so if you
start to lose it, I would imagine that you're not really fully aware that you're making bad decisions until somebody, has to smack you in the face and say, hey, that's really stupid.
So it's important, because a crew is good, because Addie's right, and they know as well as I do, because they run as much as we all do. But I go within myself. Like, if I'm starting to feel bad, I'm just dealing with it, whereas a crew is keeping track of, if you're feeling bad, here's why, because you didn't drink as much, or you're falling behind on this. So whether you need somebody or not, it's good to have people that are observing what you're doing, so if things go wrong, they can backtrack it and fix it. So,
got it.
And actually, at 90 plus people running across Death Valley, the medical staff will tell you the number one people they treat there is the crew members.
Really?
Yeah, because all the runners are taking
It's
care
so
of themselves, and the crews forget that they're still in 120 degrees in the
There
middle
was
of
a
Death
time
Valley,
I
so.
crewed Mike in a hot race, and I completely forgot, and I did it solo, so I didn't have someone backing me up. I didn't drink anything the entire day or eat, and I didn't feel like I had the need to. Like, it was so over my head, and I didn't realize it until the next day when I woke up cramping. And then I was just like, oh my God, I'm completely dehydrated.
Yeah, and it sounds like in this kind of a race, that becomes way more significant than just uncomfortable.
Oh, of course.
Well, that's why you need 3 to 4 people, because the pacer and a regular ultra doesn't really need crewed so much, as long as they have water and calories. You're running 25 to 30% of the race, which if you're pacing an ultra, that's well within your capabilities 99% of the time. But somewhere like Badwater, getting out of the car for a 3 to 5 mile stint the level of heat, that's something like you can be dehydrated or overheated when you get back in the car from just running a few miles. So making sure that the pacer and the crew takes care of themselves when they're getting in and out of the car is really a lot more important than somewhere else.
I've crewed out there 4 times. One time I had my runner was having some problems. I was, up to my eyeballs figuring it out. I ran up, sorted it all out, came back to the van, and one of my crew members had passed out. Another crew van was right there with us. I literally peeled out while she's laying on the ground to go catch my runner. I said, you guys have to hold her. I got to go take care of my runner. And then I came back and got her. She had completely heat exhaustion. So in the middle of the race, I had to drive her into town, dump her off, and then come back and get it. It's serious stuff out there.
Dump the body off.
No, it's serious stuff out there. There's a lot that can happen. And you don't tell your runner, because they don't need any drama. So,
So, you mentioned that there was another crew. Is contact with other runners, other crews, is that common? I mean, it's 90 people over 135 miles. You said that it's somewhat spread out. I'm sure everybody has different paces. How much are you really in contact with other runners? Are you going to be running and there's going to be a little pack at some point? I mean, maybe in the beginning, but what about towards the end, towards the middle?
There are times where you're alone, like that stretch coming into Lone Pine, 40 miles. You could be by yourself the whole time, but you may see somebody a few miles up. There are times that you'll pass. I mean, it's they're usually towards the end of the race. It's the same 3 or 4 people kind of leapfrogging each other and cruise, unless somebody lights it up or somebody's falling way behind. It's not a whole lot of passing towards the end.
It's kind of the same at the Keys.
Yeah.
It depends too on the year. Like when I was out there in 2015, we didn't see anybody for 60 miles.
Yeah.
Because the top 10, we finished 5th, and the top 10, their places were set by mile 70. Nobody passed anybody.
Up front, yeah.
But for the first 50 miles, because of the way they release the waves, and the reason why they do some of the people that are expected to take longer first is they're not at the end of the race by themselves. So the faster runners release last, so all the crews pass each other. The runners will start in packs, pass everyone, say hi. So the first night is it's a pretty positive atmosphere in that first stretch of like the first 25 to 30 miles. Everyone's, playing music, cheering each other on. There's a lot of honking, which is good because the first section of the race has a pretty strict cutoff due to the park permits. They want everyone out of a certain part of Death Valley before it gets to be this typical 125 to 130 degrees in that section. So that's a pretty good atmosphere. And then after that is when the race starts to separate. And then if you're running near someone, you'll leapfrog their crews for a while.
You see people, I'll say, for the first 60 miles pretty consistently, and everybody looks out for each other. I mean, you're all looking out for your own runner, but ultimately, if somebody's laying in the ditch, you're gonna offer help and stuff like that. So,
At least for a minute.
Yeah.
As you pass by.
As long as you're passing.
The nighttime actually, when you're heading towards Mount Whitney at night, is pretty cool because you can turn around and look behind you and see all the lights of all the other runners and the crews coming down the mountain. And as you go up Mount Whitney, if you go up at night, you can see, about a third of the course, and you can see all the crews and the runners. It's a pretty cool sight to see basically a caravan of, 100-mile runners coming towards the mountain. It's a pretty cool experience.
Tell me, what is this? There's somebody that's not here today that I wish could have been here, and we talked about him coming the other day. He left a little early. That's Brad Lombardi, and he's been at Badwater how many times?
I think he's going for his 5th buckle.
Okay.
Yeah.
He couldn't be here because he left early. But I mean, what is the significance of 3 of you guys, essentially from the same area? The Treasure Coast, Stewart, Port St. Lucie, Jensen Beach. Racing Badwater in the same year.
It'll never happen again.
I think it's a testament to the runners and athletes in the area. If you look around the country, there's a lot of different places that have pockets of endurance athletes. Obviously, a lot of them are in warmer climates because we can train year-round at a different level than if you live up north. Nothing against people that live up north. But California, Texas, the McFarland area where Oswaldo's from, a lot of areas send several runners. So for a smaller area like the Treasure Coast to send 3, I think is pretty significant and a great example of the level of athletes that we have around here.
Is it do you think that it's something that sort of self-perpetuates? In other words, does the fact that there's other people in the area that are going or that are doing these kinds of races, does that either inspire other runners to do it? I mean, is part of it that there are people here that are doing it already, and so that it sort of makes the jump into ultra running easier for people? Because we do have a lot of, not just people who are going to Badwater, which is, I know, unprecedented and crazy to have 3 people from the same area. I hope they don't see this, by the way, because then they'll be like, oh, that was a mistake, right? But besides just the Badwater runners, there's a lot of ultra runners in this area, aren't there?
Well, it's a great, fantastic running community, endurance sports community, period, for the size of this town, for the caliber athletes that we have. And I attribute it to all the various running clubs and groups, and everybody's supportive on multiple levels. I mean, I can't say enough about it. just the support that we've gotten. And you're right, for 3 people in this close of proximity to get into this race is astounding. And unless you know the history of the race and how hard it is to get into, you can't truly appreciate that. I mean, there's only 90 people accepted into this race worldwide, and it's an international field. And so to have, let's say, 3% of it
Mike,
from one
what
area,
percentage is that? 3 out of
it's
90?
actually 3 point something, right?
Yeah, it's like 3.3%.
3.
I don't think it's just ultra runners either. If you look at the triathlete community in this area, I mean, the guy that I look up to most is Mark Swart. He went to Kona a couple years ago. The level of runners, male and female, that we have that qualify for Boston every year, that can run 120 half marathons, that qualify for world championships at the half Ironman level, at the Ironman level, at, you know, in the different duathlons and everything like that. It's an entire community of, that's why I said endurance athletes. The ultra is probably the smallest part of the community, especially the pocket of us that run and try to compete in 100-mile races. But just the overall, you know, we got high school kids that can run 16-minute 5Ks, and every level of endurance sports in this area is competitive. And I can go train on the bridge that's a couple miles from here overnight, and in the morning there's a ton of people riding their bikes, there's people out running, doing speed work, going, you know, driving for open water swims and honking at me. So everywhere you go on a weekend or on a weekday, there's someone training somewhere for something. We all in some way know each other,
and respect
each other. So it's, you know,
respect that everybody's out there working.
It's motivational, and I think that all the different running communities and endurance communities in the area feed off each other.
It seems to me that it's just competitive enough around here to make it fun, but there's no real negative competition going on. It seems like everybody is really supportive of each other in this area. Yeah. You laugh. Do you disagree?
It's Florida's gotten a little crazy the past 7 years. I started back to self-perpetuating, like people doing it. I got into ultras because Mike Melton used to be doing, and now he's the premier
I can't
timer.
believe it's 26, almost 27 minutes into this, and that's the first time Mike Melton's name has been mentioned.
Mike's a legend, man. Everybody knows him as a timing guy, but he's a phenomenal runner. He's got a long history of stuff too.
Yeah, let's actually talk about that for a second, because you're right. Everybody thinks of Melton as being, you know, the timing guy, but
he's an
really,
OG.
He is.
Really?
Yeah, no,
right?
he is. Yeah. We used to meet at somebody's house, Bonnie Wolf's house, the original Strider group. There was 20 people there. I was the young guy, if that tells you anything, how long ago that was. But Melton, Pete Weiler, Melton we were all marathon trainers, and he spun off and started doing ultras. He's run across the state. He did a Ragnar relay.
Solo.
He did the whole thing solo.
Wow.
He's done a lot of really cool stuff. So he actually inspired me to give it a shot. Around Lake Okeechobee, and we've just kind of gone from there, and so it is like Badwater. Now we've come to Badwater, and there's three people locally. But back to what we were saying, Florida, about 7 years ago, about 10 of us were showing up at the same ultras over and over again, and they started a Facebook group called FUR.
Hi, Eric.
Yeah, and it's
What does that stand for?
Florida Ultrarunners,
Okay.
and it was basically for the 10-15 of us to kind of keep track of who's going to what race. And now I think there's like probably,
There's thousands of
thousands of
members.
members.
Sure.
And Florida's gotten to be its little subcultures of different pockets, and I won't say they're overtly competitive, but there is some wacky stuff going on in Florida, to be polite. So
Yeah, and it's interesting because we're the one area that's really not involved in any of that.
You mean we're the one at, like, the Treasure Coast?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're like our own. It's just
Are we
interesting.
the Switzerland of Florida ultra running?
try to be.
Yeah, pretty much.
Try to be. But it's all working itself out. You know, everything's good. So.
I mean, that kind of stuff is always very interesting to me, and you know, You
I
could
think
always
it's
you could
'cause
always hurt
Florida's-
feelings by talking about it too much, but it is super interesting, right? All that kind of thing.
Florida's hanging down here. There's just nowhere for anybody to go. Like you have California or the Midwest, people spread out, but for whatever reason down here, it's really intimate. South Florida in general, I think, is pretty intimate. It's
We're
great.
kind of a joke in regards to the rest of the country,
Yeah.
ultra running wise.
Florida's,
What do you mean?
Florida's looked down on.
Yeah,
Why?
for sure. Because those people out west are like the real deal. Like
Yeah.
they're like sprinting up mountains, sprinting down mountains, like jumping over shit. And can I say that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like most of us here are road snobs. So they really don't think we're anything, and Florida runners think they are everything. So we're kind of a joke.
Very well said.
They don't think that we're anything here because people are doing insane stuff.
Like what?
The Appalachian Trail too. I mean, they're trying to set fastest records. Who can do that the fastest? Who can just very minor what we're doing here. I mean, like we said last weekend at the dinner, I pointed and I said that guy over there just climbed Everest, last month.
Who is that?
Grant Mon.
He's currently
Grant who?
running Vol State.
He's in the lead.
314 miles. in
314 miles. He'll finish what, today? Tomorrow?
Tennessee. Probably.
He was at 201
And he's
last
going to run
night.
Badwater as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Mount Everest, Vol State, then Badwater within.
Oh,
how
then he's
much?
going to Angeles Crest, and then he's going to Tour de Giants afterwards.
So another 100 and then
So-
another 205.
I'm like running a 5K at Badwater
Yeah.
compared to him. So
And
go
and
sit over
I
there.
had the pleasure of meeting Grant the other night, and there is something about him that you instantly know that this dude is badass, right? He's on another level of
Another level.
badassery,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely.
But he's representing Florida too. I'll give it. There
Yeah.
are some fast people
There
that
are
have come out of Florida. Like we even have Allie and
For sure. Yeah.
but in general,
Overall.
yeah, in general, it's
We're unfortunately here. We're a product of our environment, which is you can either run on a road, or you can run loops in the woods for an ultra. We don't have the opportunity to run mountains, and as all three of us know, it's unfortunately rather expensive to travel anywhere
True.
to run those races, and it's a little bit daunting to look at a race like that and realize that I'm going to spend however many thousands of dollars to fly to a mountain somewhere, and the only way I can train for it is to run up and down a bridge.
Yeah.
So do I want to go run in a mountain and finish
Try to finish.
try to
honestly.
finish within 30 hours and spend all this money when I can go run race A, B, or C because what's available for me to train on? And that's not saying it's not worth taking a challenge. It's just a lot of us here are parents. We're of the age where we have families and other obligations. So
Let's talk about that for a second. I mean, running an ultra in general, Badwater especially. I mean, you sort of have to. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like you sort of have to throw balance out the window. Like, how is it possible to balance training and work and family and successfully train for something like this? Is that even possible? And if it is, how do you do it?
It's hard. And you're
I'll
very tired.
I'll say it's possible, but it has ramifications. So while I might get 30 miles in before 7 o'clock and I'm home with my kids, I'm whipped.
Yeah.
So the ramifications are you aren't as responsive to your kids and your wife, and so everybody has to be all in for these races. So can't be a selfish commitment, although it is completely. But I know that I'll be making up some time with my family and stuff like that. I'll say, we all have jobs too, so you've got to, there's a lot of that. I have a lot of stress at my job, and then I'm, a dad and stuff. So it is hard to do, but you see people around the country doing it, and if that means getting up at 3:30 Monday through Friday to get my run in, unfortunately, if you want it, you got to do it. So.
And to me, and this goes
Or
for
at 9 o'clock
Ironman
at
training
night,
as
so.
well. To me, the most impressive athletes are the ones that can be successful and still maintain some balance in their life. And stay married and stay employed and.
If you stay married, then you didn't train hard enough.
That's right.
Story of my life.
Just not training hard enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm married.
So so that what do you think what does it take to do it, like mentally, physically? I would imagine that there's some kind of genetic predisposition, or am I wrong? Is that not true?
I'm going to be very honest with you.
No.
It's hard work. And you have to be willing. Like, in all honesty, the people can probably hear them. My kids are here right now. It's very helpful, obviously, that Addie and I are together, and we decide together a lot to run. If we're not running, we don't run the same races, but I'm training for something, then she'll train for something. We take turns. We understand the commitment. There's a lot of nights I haven't been around. I leave on Friday night to run. I come home and I don't go to sleep. I lift and cross train. She goes to run, and then I take care of the kids until she comes home. Mentally, you have to make the decision of what are you willing to sacrifice, and for me personally, it's been the rest of my life. So I work, I train, and I spend time with my family, and that's absolutely it. I rarely watch TV. I don't go out to social events. Will tell you, we're friends, and I see him twice a year. There's a lot of things that I don't do so that I'm able to do this, and you just have to decide, what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're willing to live with.
Do you think that that's the biggest blockage to most people trying to who have the inclination to take that step up to ultra running in general? Do you think that they quickly realize the type of sacrifice that it takes and back away, or
It depends on what you're trying to achieve, because you can get through a 100-miler on, let's say,
Minimal.
a marathon training program. It's
just gonna
ultra running
suck.
is so mental. And
but I think it's going to
easy.
suck anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
easy for
but
us to say,
level
oh,
of
it's so mental. Literally you can do it, but until you go through that motion, you don't know what you have.
So tell me about some of you mentioned some inspiration, Will, some of the people that have inspired you. Are there certain books that you would say have sort of helped to inspire your training or your competition? Let's start with books. Anything that you can think of?
Pam Reed's book I read before I started ultra running, and she's incredible.
Pam Reed.
You've met her.
I met her a couple of times in
Oh, yeah,
Kona.
that's right, yeah.
She won Badwater, not won her age group or won like top first woman. She actually won
yeah.
Badwater
stop.
2 years in a row, I think, right?
Yeah, something
So
like that.
Pam Reed's book. What else?
Dean
Just
Karnazes too. His run book, and then what is the one? Stories of like overnight runner. I forgot. I'm sorry.
Tales of an Overnight Runner.
There you go.
Tales of an Overnight Runner. Okay.
Yes.
I read Born to Run. I've read Marshall Ulrich has a book out.
Oh yes, Running on Empty. Very
Yeah.
good.
I'm a bad reader. I start a book and don't finish it, but
I will be honest with you, I've never finished a book about running,
Yeah.
and zero of my inspiration has come from a book about running.
Okay.
I'm opposite though. The interest was there, and then I dove into every single ultra book there was, and I read it, cover to cover, just to get just exactly what I was getting into. All the ugly details are in there, and after reading that, and I still wanted to do it, then yeah.
So, Mike, is there, besides books, is there some kind of external, do you seek motivation externally? I don't know, from interviews like this, because I'm sure most people are going to be extremely motivated from this interview.
Or bored.
But is there something like that for you?
So the only reason I ever signed up for a 100-miler was because I went and crewed at Badwater and decided I wanted to run it.
This coming from someone who said he would never run more than the marathon distance.
So I went out to Badwater. I had run 150K, which was actually Badwater's race, Cape Fear. We went with some friends at the time, the two of us, and did well, and that was all fine and good. And I was invited to crew and pace at Badwater, and I said, sure, why not? I went out there and crewed and paced, and I just fell in love with the idea and the whole experience. I'm not a very social person, so while I was good at running...
Good thing you like coffee, then.
We have a question here.
What's the question? Hold on, sorry to interrupt. What's the question?
It's from Jessica Bart. What is your advice on how to get through mental blocks when running long miles?
Okay. All right, well, let's get to that in just a sec. So you were saying that you only reason you ran Badwater.
No, I went out there, and it was the only reason I signed up for a 100-miler, because if you want to run Badwater, you have to run hundreds.
So this really is sort of the culmination of I won't say a lifelong, but a dream or a goal that you've had for quite a while now.
Yeah, so I went out there, and it was just different. You know, I've run the Chicago Marathon, I've run the Boston Marathon, I've run a lot of different marathons in different places, and not being a person that enjoys huge groups of people, and it's a great experience, but it's not. This was different, and
yeah,
it
the
wasn't.
nice thing about Badwater is that there's just not a lot of people out there, right?
No, it's pretty much.
Well, there's people. There's just plenty of room too.
It wasn't even the race. It was just the experience and seeing what people were willing to do just to finish, and seeing someone with MS finish a 135-mile race in Death Valley, and seeing Harvey Lewis, who's currently running the Appalachian Trail, finish like 40th and had won the previous year, but he went out there and killed himself just to get to the finish line, and another previous champion, Oswaldo, waiting for him at the bottom of Mount Whitney to congratulate him on working so hard. And it was just the place and the athletes that compete. It was just something that I had never experienced before, and I actually knew when I got out of the car I wanted to go back. So I started running 100-milers and just fell in love with the struggle of running them. The mental pain, the physical pain, the training that goes into it. It's so different than a marathon, and it's so much more about what you can pull out of yourself. And it changed from the point that I don't look at a race and it's not about a medal, it's not about a buckle, it's not about it. It changed running for me, and it changed what it means and what the goals are that come out of it. So I think the greatest inspiration has just been the struggle to try to complete these races and be able to perform at a decent level in them.
So in a way, it's that the struggle sort of, it is the goal. It sounds like the process is really the goal. You're going through the process, and that's what it's about. And I know that, at least from my limited experience in Ironman racing, you know, you show up on the day of the race, and it's a culmination of everything that you have done to prepare for it, and you know, that's sort of like your day to show. If you haven't done the work, it shows, and if you have done the work, it shows. But you're not gonna.
It may show.
Yeah.
That's
no guarantees.
the killer part.
Yeah, because anything can happen.
Anything.
So Jessica asked us a question. She said, "What do you do in those moments in long runs? If anybody has run, you know, training for a marathon, you know, you get to those moments where you're just feel like you're at the bottom, that there's nothing left, that you can't, like you've got nothing to give anymore. But clearly you do. I mean, you have more. What do you do to get yourself, and thank you for the question, Jessica, what do you do to get yourself through those moments? Like, what's the self-talk? Or what's the technique? What's the strategy at that time?
Well, now that I've, spent the last couple years doing some long running, you learn that every low point, a high point is coming. So you just got to hang on to, this may suck for just another mile. It may suck for 5 miles, but when you get that like up part and whatever that may be, it feels great, and you're like, holy crap, like how was I feeling like trash 30 minutes ago? And it may not even be like a nutrition and hydration thing that you solve, like something just snaps, and it snaps immediately, and you're just in this flow, and you always remember that that's going to come eventually, so you just got to hang on to that.
Yeah.
So I mean, when I did skydive 150, I had to hang on for a very long time with, I'm gonna get a high soon, it's coming, and you just gotta know that it's gonna be there.
Yeah, you mentioned the word flow, and I've talked to a lot of athletes, and that's a word that seems to be universal. You know, whether it's, you know, basketball players or runners or wrestlers, they often use that word flow, where it seems to be everything is clicking and you're not even thinking about it.
It's effortless.
Yeah. Is that something that you guys have all experienced?
Yeah, you know, I was thinking the other day, you know how when you drive sometimes and you don't remember like the past
how did
few
I
miles
get here?
when you're driving? I actually have had that recently happen while I was running. Like
Yeah.
I did it out and back, and I couldn't remember how I ran out. So when I turned around, I was like, holy crap, like how did that happen? I can't even really remember my route back. So it was just, but to answer her question too, like it's the same thing with Addie, but I'll actually look at my watch, and rather than times or miles, I'll say, you're gonna just deal with this for 15 more minutes, like, and you'll feel different in 15 more minutes. So I just chunk it up like that to where it's not like a point or a mileage marker or how I feel. You feel bad now, but if I just can deal with it for a certain amount of time, and in a long ultra, you know there's time. There's nothing but time, and you're not the only one dealing with stuff.
And it's not
so
like a
you just deal with
marathon
it, so.
where like also, if something goes wrong in an actual race in the marathon,
Right.
you're kind of done.
Yeah.
Like you're
It's
just gonna
different.
have to accept another time goal.
Right.
Whereas in an ultra, you can problem solve.
Yeah.
And you could take that time out and sit out for 30 minutes or whatever, and like regroup and still do well, and still probably come within goal too. But pacing Mike too, sometimes like he'll tell me I feel like walking, and I'm like, fight that urge, get to, and I'll pick something out up ahead. And a lot of times we'll get to that point where I'll allow him to walk, and the urge is gone, like he doesn't feel like walking anymore. So a lot of times like that, like 15 more minutes, or like get to that building and see how you feel then.
I honestly think in training, when you mentally run into a brick wall, that's fantastic. Because if you go through training and you don't struggle, you will never know how to combat those things on race day when everything that you worked for is on the line.
And
So
sorry, go ahead.
running on, do you know how, you know, it's difficult. I train by myself mostly because Addie and I don't have the opportunity to run together very often because of our family. But I will spend, I've run 50, 60 miles over that bridge at night, and there's nights where it's awful. There's nights where it's the worst experience that I've had in months, and I tell myself this is the goal of training. This is the point. You want to feel like this, and I look at, you know, that's more important to me than the miles I'm finishing, is getting through those moments, and you just tell yourself this is what you signed up for, and getting through those moments is more of an accomplishment than running, say, 10 miles, because you can run 10 miles 10 times and never get through those moments, but getting through those are what's going to help you on race day.
And so, not to get too corny here, but how does that really translate into life? Because, I mean, think about it. Life is sort of like a major ultra, right? And we go through these time periods, and everybody has to go through them, where it just seems like nothing's going right, and it's very difficult. Uh-oh, we got an emergency. Ouch. Perfect example, right?
Dad life.
So you go through like these times where man, it just seems like everything is hopeless, and you just gotta hang on.
You hang on,
and
that's it.
And you keep pulling through, and you gotta know that up ahead you're gonna find that flow again, right? Up ahead, there's always gonna be good times. Things pass, and like I said, without getting too corny, is it true that this kind of training, and I think, to me, I think that marathon training or Ironman training also is part of it. Is it true that sort of trains you for life in that way, or am I being like too dramatic here?
Actually, probably the past 10 years, I'll say 9 years, have been pretty tough for me personally, and that's ironically when I got into ultra running. I don't know if it's a coping skill, but it's definitely translated to an outlet, and like a metaphor. So I don't really try to solve life's problems when I'm running the ultras, but getting there is part of the process. I think it's definitely made me deal with a lot of things, for sure.
Or let things go, really.
Yeah.
Letting things go.
Yeah, like I feel like, you probably spend a lot of time problem solving when you're out on those miles alone. I mean, when you're with friends, they're enjoyable, you're laughing, or you can process things with your friends, but there isn't a solution after like a 3-hour, 4-hour, 5-hour jaunt out there. Like there probably really isn't.
But you're clearing your head,
You're clearing your head, and you kind of like just accept that this is what it is right now, and it'll work itself out.
If anything, you're shutting down to accomplish the run, and so that's a form of like a meditation or something.
I think the most valuable thing, honestly, was what Dan said to me during my 150-mile thing was, I mean, what was it? If it's going to hurt this bad, or you're going to allow yourself to hurt this bad, make it worth it and finish.
Yeah.
And Dan came out just as I was about at the 100-mile mark. And I mean, I was in a world of hurt, and you start doubting yourself. And I was just in a world of hurt, and it was true. Like, I already put myself through this much. I might as well make it worth it and like finish.
Yeah, I think I stopped you for a second and I said to you, Addie, are you going to finish? Are you going to finish this?
And no one's ever asked me that during any point where anyone's paced me. Are you going to finish that? And it kind of like took me like by surprise, and I was like,
you had
holy
to decide
crap,
right
I had
then.
to decide.
Yeah.
And you put me on the spot. And I kind of like blew it off initially, and you were just like, no, you're going to answer my question.
Yeah, and I think that's in life, again, not to be so corny, but in life there's, you've got to make a decision about something sometimes and say, this might not be the most fun thing right now, but this is what I've decided, and the deciding means that you're cutting off the possibility of any other outcome, and obviously anything can happen, but if you've decided that you're going to do something, that's what you're going to do. And if you get halfway through and it becomes super difficult, well, you can either decide to waste all that time and energy and effort and pain and suffering, or you can make it worth it by accomplishing what you've set out to do in ultra running, and I'm assuming in ultra running and marathon running in anything. I think it's, for most people, I think the fear of putting that kind of time and effort into something during training is there because it means that they're gonna have to finish. They're gonna have to do it because it's easy to say, well, I didn't really put the time in, or well, I didn't really do what I had to do. But when you are out there and doing it and make the commitment, that's it. I think anybody who is willing to do something like this is the kind of person that's going to follow through, right?
I think.
Go ahead.
Well, I think this running too teaches you to look at things differently. For me personally, for this race at Badwater, I don't care what the time is when I finish. I don't care what the buckle looks like. I don't care what people at home are going to look at on the timing thing. You need to learn to let go of a lot of the things. Well, if I don't finish this marathon in 3:02, what are my training partners going to think? Success for me for this race, I defined 3 years ago, and it's going to be on the Sunday, the day before the race, when I get handed the bib. Because it means that the last 3 years, for what I set out to do, to run all those 100-mile races, to run over 15,000 miles, to not sleep, to be alone on a bridge in the middle of the night, blistered and crying and bleeding, and to get up and keep running, and all the sacrifices I made from her, you know, the nights that I didn't go to bed, the nights that I kissed my kids on the forehead and went out, it's all just to get the bib. The 135 miles after that is a celebration and is going to be an experience. So I've had to redefine what's going to be success, because I refuse to say if I don't finish it in X hours, it's a failure. The amount of time and family commitment and everything that's been put into it, you know, you have to let some things go, and you can't look, you know, if I don't run this section in 6 hours, I'm not going to finish in 28, and then I'm not going to finish 10th, and I'm not going to, it's taught me to evolve as a person, as a runner, and let things go, and there's 48 hours to finish, and as long as I can get in 1 second under that, I don't need the t-shirt to tell me I've been there. I don't need the buckle. I need everything that's going to be up here, because that's what got me there. There isn't any trinket that helped get me there. There was no magic, anything. It's been the hard work, and the payoff is going to be, whether they're miserable or not, those 135 miles. And that will be the motivation when it starts to suck, was that's the moment that I wanted. No matter how bad it is, for 3 years, that's the moment that I wanted. So I need to live in that moment, and whether it hurts, whether it's great, whatever that moment brings me, that's what I worked for. And so, as twisted as it sounds, that's what I'm going to enjoy, is going to be the process to get to the finish line. Whatever path that is, you know, once we get there.
Just so you know, too, first place at Badwater gets
That's
exactly the same thing as last place. And there's mutual respect from the whole group. Even the people that DNF for whatever reason, they get like mad props, because just struggling out there is and that's what it's about. Every person in that race could write a book about that race, their race, you know. So it's
there's no podium,
intense, so,
there's no age group awards, nobody gets a rock, nobody gets a page from a coloring book, there's no trophy. You just get introduced at the post-race party from the first DNF to first place in that order, and then after that it doesn't matter what place you finished in.
Well, sounds like it's going to be a great experience and an awful experience at the same time. I congratulate all you guys for even putting yourself out there to do it and to do the training, and good luck. Thank you for doing this. Thanks for being here. I know we've been going for like an hour, and amazingly there's still quite a few people with us. Thanks for sticking with us, and
thanks for your help, Dan.
Any questions?
Dan's
though?
a man too, by the way.
I mean, you could. Does anyone have questions?
If you have a question, now is your time. We're going to be closing up here in just a second.
Our coffee ran out.
Go ahead.
And the coffee ran
Oh yeah, I want to say thank you to Bunkhouse. Bunkhouse, what is it called? Bunkhouse Coffee Bar, Jensen Beach, right downtown Jensen Beach. It's great. It's absolutely adorable right here.
Perfect.
It's actually nice and cool.
They've got vegan stuff. It's great.
Yeah. So thank you to Bunkhouse.
To the runners watching, if you're doing island loops or bridges or something on a Saturday or Sunday morning, it's a great place to get breakfast afterwards.
No one cares. No one's asking.
Oh,
Heroes, go hit it. Frank said.
there you go. Thanks, Frank.
That's what she said.
All right. So
But seriously,
one question.
Megan Hinman, I'm so excited to watch y'all get it, guys. I'm not getting anything. I'm just sitting in the van and yelling at my.
Yeah, I have a feeling she'll get some miles in.
she's
All right,
getting a
thank you.
vacation to Las Vegas.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
All right, thanks everybody. Thank you guys for coming
That was
out.
good.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.